Seems like every year in every sport, there's a team that shocks the world. So could it be the Arizona Cardinals this year? It is another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
Again, brought to you by Desert Financial Credit Union, Arizona's #1 credit union named by Forbes. I've got PHNX Cardinals' own Bo Brock, and I've got PHNX Sun Devils' own Anthony Totri. I am Erik Ruby. We are here every Monday and Thursday on Southwest Bias, and I got a crazy take.
Okay.
And just a crazy thought, I guess. All right, and I can already see it on your face, Bo.
It's the norm around here, though.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Now, am I wrong in saying that there's always a team in a rebuild that gets to their next step of it a little bit faster than people expect? Right? Am I right? Right?
I think that's what makes the NFL so great.
And am I also correct in thinking that with this Arizona Cardinals rebuild and the infrastructure around and what we've seen so far, balanced with what they already have on the roster, they could be one of those teams? Am I right or am I wrong?
Do you want to have a nuanced conversation about this, or do you want to have like a zero-sum?
We're gonna get to nuance. I'm just setting the scene, okay?
Yes, there's a lot to be excited about about the new regime. Absolutely.
So, am I crazy for thinking in the next 2 to 4 years,
2 to 4,
we can see a deep playoff run? Possibly, this is the crazy. I get it. A Super Bowl appearance. Your initial reaction?
That's very realistic timeline, in my opinion. I thought we were talking 2024 specifically. But
I mean,
the fact that you stretched it out nearly half a decade.
Fine,
yeah,
2 years.
Absolutely.
2
No,
years,
look,
2 years.
That's if we're talking like how rebuilds go in the NFL, it's not necessarily linear. Like you can see teams make a massive jump from going from cellar dwellers to teams that are very relevant and knocking on the door of playing in the final game of the season. That's not unprecedented. And I think that's why NFL fans get excited. That's why hope springs eternal each and every September, is because with a solid offseason, you can turn things around. You make some savvy moves in free agency. You have a great draft. And then also you see a jump from players that you already have on your roster, right? And then also that you couple that with a strong infrastructure organizationally, especially in the coaching position. So yes.
Okay, then let me get crazy.
The pieces are in place for that.
Then let's take away the 4 or the 3. Let's say end of next season.
Okay.
End of next season, right? Let's say this season, Totri, is that, wow, this is a feisty team that's way better than they were last year. And look at these building blocks. Another good draft. Big free agents might want to come here, see what's cooking here. Mm-hmm. End of next season, I say Cardinals can go on a deep playoff run, maybe a Super Bowl appearance. Am I psychotic?
I mean, you're definitely not totally in your right mind.
Okay,
right?
That's fair. I mean, that's
I mean, you look at the Texans last season, right? Literally, one of the worst teams in all of football last season. And immediately, you get the right head coach, you get some star players in the draft, a couple free agency pieces, and you're a deep playoff team right there. And now we're going to see what they could do this offseason. So certainly, I think they would need to rise above expectations this year. What does that look like? Does that look like a wild card team? Does that look like a divisional round team? I don't know. Next year is crazy, but the part of me that isn't totally off that ship is the fact that you're in the NFC and you have your quarterback. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of NFC teams specifically can say that they have their guy at that position, specifically one that could be a superstar. And if you have a star quarterback, then anything's possible.
Well, and I think like if you really just start laying it out and like we'll just stick with the end of next season, right? Just a fast acceleration, but not so crazy that it's this year. You're right, and you have your quarterback in Kyler Murray. Let's say he has a fantastic season this season, right? He comes out and just absolutely exceeds expectations. This is who we thought Kyler could be, but nationally he gets that perspective. Marvin Harrison Jr. is exactly what we expected him to be. Michael Wilson continues to grow. Greg Dortch is a weapon. Offensive line continuity is good. You come in with the defense, Jonathan Gannon, Nick Rallis, like they have their draft picks hit, right? And then you have another draft with I'm just saying, if you lay everything out, and of course, in sports, it's rare this happens, but the Texans is a great point. If what they are trying to do is working, I don't see why by the end of next season you can't be like, listen, a playoff berth and a playoff run is something very feasible.
That absolutely should be the narrative around this team this time next year. No doubt about it. There's things have to go right, and you're going to have to get consistent play from your quarterback. Like, what were we talking about with the Los Angeles Rams at this time last year? What were we talking about with the team that Totri brought up with the Houston Texans? Like, there wasn't a whole lot of hype around those teams.
Right.
Like, actually, those were two teams that were predicted to be back in the top 10 drafting, but what kept them away from that, what actually put them firmly in the playoff picture, respectively, for their conferences, the AFC and the NFC, was consistent quarterback play throughout.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that from Kyler Murray since 2021, probably 2020 when he played, a full length of games. And I think if you get, like you said, Kyler Murray playing at a good clip the entire season long, Arizona Cardinals are going to make noise. But that's going to be what the kind of is going to differentiate between them being like taking that next projected jump from a 4-win team to maybe a 6 to 7-win team to pushing them to a 9 to 10-win team, where it's like, hey, this offseason in 2025, if they make the right moves, if Monty Austinfort continues to be him at the GM position, then it's like, maybe they're what we're talking about with the Texans right now. Yeah. Could they take that next step? Could they make their way to the divisional round, to the conference championship round, to the Super Bowl?
Right. And Totri, I think the quarterback point is fantastic, but I also think something with the Rams and with the Texans that now the Cardinals do share is solid, competent coaching.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? And how important is that now, where you can have the quarterback, you can have the talent, but if you don't have the right person to get that team to gel together and to operate, there is no playoff run.
I mean, it's one thing to have your quarterback, but a solid head coach can take a team so much further than maybe the expectations even think, right? We keep going back to the Texans, DeMeco Ryans. He really, really stepped up throughout the entire season. I think you were able to see him grow as a head coach. Dan Campbell, I think, is another great example of a coach that has taken the right step.
Galvanized the locker room.
Yeah, and again, people, when Jared Goff...
City.
Yeah.
When Jared Goff went to the Lions, nobody was talking about that team potentially being a playoff team. And you look at what they've done over the last 2 seasons, realistically, and you've seen Goff grow, you've seen Campbell grow. And if Gannon can be that type of coach for Kyler, he's got a chip on his shoulder, then there is realistically a shot at this team making a deep playoff run. But you also have to keep in mind that division right now, and for the foreseeable future, runs to the 49ers.
Yeah, it's a murderer's row. It also reminds me of, Gannon's first year in Philadelphia. He's the DC. They've got a talented OC and Shane Steichen at that time. They've got, the quarterback position. Like, nobody was thinking about Jalen Hurts at that point being a force in the league, being the leader that he is. We're seeing that kind of materialize right before our eyes, and Kyler Murray is changing and shifting the narrative surrounding him nationwide, and I think he'll continue to do so. But like, you look at that jump that Philly made in that first season, and they sneak into the playoffs and then have a good offseason that next year. They're in the Super Bowl immediately. The biggest thing, though, I think, and what we'll be talking about at this time next season, did they do enough defensively? Because I think we're excited about this offense.
Yeah.
We talk about Kyler, we talk about Trey McBride. Maserati Marv, as I wear the Maserati Marv t-shirt.
PHNX Locker.
There you go. Michael Wilson, James Conner. Just an embarrassment of riches that this offense, you can realistically talk about them as a top 10 unit, but this was a defense that gave up the second most points in the NFL. You've got this young DC. You've got probably a shift of half your personnel on defense.
Right.
Like, hopefully you can find some pieces to move forward with. Darius Robinson, 27th overall pick. And then some, but you're probably talking about, hey, how can they supplement the pass rush? How can they get there? How can they make that jump like JG's defense in Philly did, where they were just, could they find their Hassan Reddick? Can they get to where they're just putting opposing quarterbacks on their back consistently, 70 times in that season?
Yeah,
So,
and could it be somebody like a BJ Ojolari in their second season coming out and really stepping up for the team? And I think the defense is a great point because, the offense is a lot more of a sure thing when it comes to veterans, when it comes to young talent, guys that are blue chip prospects, everything like that. I mean, we're talking about a number 1 pick in Kyler Murray, the number 4 pick in Marvin Harrison Jr., like a guy that in Michael Wilson, if he wasn't injured at Stanford, if he just played, would have been a high round draft pick as well. Trey McBride, a 2nd round tight end. There is legitimate building blocks around there. And there are a couple on the defensive end as well. But I think that comes into play with they just need to play above their level, right? Play in a way that people and free agents can look at the Cardinals and say, oh my gosh, that is a place that I want to play. That's a system I want to play in. And maybe that guy wasn't the greatest, but I'm better than that guy. And I want to go there and I want to be put in that position. And I do think that what's underrated in all of this, and something that was even proven during the Steve Keim, Cliff Kingsbury era, is that Arizona as a location, as a state, as a, like, the city where they even play, it's where people want to be. If you are a good team with good infrastructure, a good, like, everything top to bottom, from we have consistency on offense, we have good coordinators, we have a good head coach, and I get to go live in Arizona, like, it's proven. Guys like DeAndre Hopkins are happy to be here. J.J. Watt is happy to be here. Zach Ertz is happy to be here. Like, that's an important next step, Totri, in accelerating that timeline. It's being good with what you have so that something that's great wants to come and join you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Again, we keep bringing up the Texans, but look at the offseason that they've had just in terms of going out and getting high-level free agents. I do want to get back to the defensive point, or just make a point on that. You look at the defensive line specifically over the last decade, 15 years of great Arizona Cardinals teams, or the teams that at least made playoff runs, and they always have at least one superstar along that defensive line, whether you're talking about a J.J. Watt, a Calais Campbell, a Darnell Dockett. Like, those have been just staple players along Cardinals defense that's helped this team elevate in what historically has been a pretty defensive-heavy NFC West.
So we're going to be fair. I know we've talked a lot about what could be if it's all good and all great, and we're going to get to what could maybe be in the way of this perfect scenario. But first, I want to tell you about the perfect place to keep your money, and that is Desert Financial Credit Union. For more than 84 years, I'm saying 85 years because I saw it in a commercial. Desert Financial has been Arizona's largest, most trusted local credit union, dedicated to creating exceptional experiences by giving back to the community. And if you don't believe me by saying that, believe me by saying I am that community. I know Bo is that community. I know Totri is that community. It is somewhere that my family has kept their money. It is where I have kept my money since I got my very first job back in high school. And it is absolutely a fantastic place, not just for your basics, your checkings, and your savings accounts, but also mortgages, loans, credit cards, investment options, and more. Plus, right now, they want to give you $200 for free. That's right. You don't have to go put the money in. They say, we're going to put the money in for you.
That only happens in Monopoly.
Yeah,
free money.
It's literally, it's literally free money, guys. All you have to do when you open a free checking account online, you can get $200 in bonuses. Get started by visiting desertfinancial.com/200. And they do have Arizona Cardinals designed debit cards. They have Arizona State Sun Devils designed debit cards. And of course, they just have, like, your basics, your landscapes, and everything like that. You know, if you just want to keep your fandom to right here, which make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Bo, when I say the biggest roadblock for the Cardinals to be deep run playoff contenders next year, it's what?
Can the defense make the jump?
Okay,
Like,
it's not, can Kyler Murray stay healthy?
I think, I think that's always the qualifier. That was the qualifier that kind of followed Matthew Stafford around for his entire career, right? In Detroit, and when he got to L.A., and then once he did, and you saw that consistency from him, and you saw that the team could compete when he was in the lineup. I think that the same thing goes for the Arizona Cardinals, and the same thing kind of goes across the entire landscape of the NFL. You get consistent and a good bill of health from your quarterback, you're going to be in a pretty decent spot, especially if he's a talented guy like Kyler Murray. But I think that, like, if you're really looking at it and just on paper, you're like, hey, can this defense, especially in the NFC West, can it get off the field enough? Can it create enough turnovers to put the ball in this offense that we assume is going to be making some noise in 2024? Can you get it in their hands enough?
Yeah.
And when, I think it's going to be a fun season, but can they get enough stops? Can they make enough turnovers to where they can really, truly make some noise?
Totri, you mentioned earlier just the NFC West in itself is a gauntlet, right? Is that the biggest road bump? Is it not even something that they can control, but merely the teams that they have to go up against?
I mean, I think it's something that you can control in all of these teams, right, that play in any of these divisions. There's at least one juggernaut. I would say less of the NFC West, more specifically the San Francisco 49ers.
Right.
That's a roster that from top to bottom is upper echelon of the entire NFL. You look at the coaching staff, you look at the front office, they have been humming outside of Brandon Ayuk, obviously. But that is a team that if you want to make a deep playoff run, if you want to be in the conversation for a Super Bowl, you have to find a way to beat that team. And over the last couple of seasons, that's been not just the Cardinals' bugaboo, but most of the NFC. So if you want to eventually get to what you're talking about, you got to find a way to beat one of the best rosters in football.
And I think that kind of comes to where my point, and I'm not going to say it's like the biggest obstacles, and I don't think they can overcome this, but I do think that it's the biggest point in all of this. And it's, you got to bolster the defense. Yeah, you have to make sure that everything on that end is secure. You have to make sure the coaching is great. You also need to hit some home runs in the draft. And especially in those later rounds. Like your top picks, your Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, your Robinsons as well from this past year, like your Paris Johnson Jr.'s, those blue chip guys, it goes without being said, those need to be hits, right, in order to be successful. But it can't just stop there. And that is part of the reason why I am more confident in the best case scenario being a possibility, is because I have maybe an unhealthy amount of faith in Monty Ossenfort. And not just him, though, but this front office taking guys from like the Detroit Lions, who we mentioned earlier as maybe a model that the Cardinals could emulate and make that run. And so for me, when you look at these late round picks, and you even look at maybe the third and the fourth round, whether it's a Michael Wilson or
deep
not.
as 6. Dante Stills on that defensive line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing where if he can, over this past draft, next draft, take your top end picks, hit on those, but then also supplement the rest of your roster with guys that you hit on because your scouting department is better than everybody else's, that will significantly change your trajectory.
You also got to have a culture in place that I think you already see JG kind of building, right?
Exactly.
It's one thing to bring in talented guys, but the entire NFL is full of talented guys. You have to have the right locker room for some of these guys to go in there and really blossom. And I think JG is definitely building that. But like you said, you can't just hit on those early round picks. Those early round picks have to be home runs.
Right.
The same way that everybody expects Marvin Harrison Jr. to be a home run. And then you supplement it with second, third, even sixth round talent.
Yeah, and I think that from even what we've just seen in the War Room videos of draft night and Monty wheeling and dealing.
He's a killer on the phone, man.
He is the type of guy that you look at and you're like, he knows what he's doing. He's ready for this moment. He is prepared for it. He's put the work in. You look at the same thing with JG and how he just came in and
adults are in the room now.
Yeah, he completely shifted the culture. We talked earlier this week about the worst contracts in Arizona sports history. The two guys that JG and Monty replaced were on that list. And so you come in and you have, if a quarterback stays healthy and your GM drafts well, and like you said, Totri, all that culture is laid out. There is no reason for it not to be better than what national media expects, and sooner rather than later. Because, again, nobody was coming into this year and going, man, those Texans, they're going to make that deep run. I just think that we need to obviously go forward with, let's have realistic expectations to where not putting something on the team where if they don't achieve it, like if they don't make a playoff run this year, it's like, well, they're out and it's over or whatever. But more just say, hey, we see everything heading in the right direction. If they continue to throw like gasoline on that fire, they could explode.
Or just keep stoking it, right? Or you keep adding to it and building it. And, Jonathan Gannon said before they broke for this little hiatus that we all hate during the NFL offseason, right before training camp starts back up, is they could potentially have 30 guys on their roster who haven't played their 18th game in the NFL.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And, you have a 12-person draft class. You had 13 first-year players at the end of the last season. You got 25 guys. That's nearly half your roster. And they're first- and second-year players. The future is bright. And I think a lot of people have a ton of confidence in the direction of this organization going forward because Ossenfort and Gannon, I think that they understand it. It's more than just going out there and being the guy in the sidelines and being the guy in the war room. They've got their hands on everything in this organization, and they're doing everything within their power to make them a winner.
Well, at least we can have these conversations somewhat earnestly.
Yeah.
Because 2 years ago, that was not happening. Am I psychotic? Am I crazy? Are we maybe onto something? Make sure you let us know in the comments down below. Remember, PHNX is on the march to 30,000 subscribers, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out a lot. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you share this video. And, of course, if you want more Cardinals talk every single weekday, you can hear Bo Brock and Johnny Venerable on PHNX Cardinals live at 4:30 every day. And if you want to hear some football, some basketball talk more in the college world, you can check out myself and Anthony Totri at PHNX Sun Devils. That is also every single weekday, but at 1:30 a little bit earlier. You can follow Bo at Bo Brock. You can follow Totri at Anthony's _Totri.
_Totri.
Anthony _Totri. You can follow myself at Erik Ruby. That's Erik with a K. And until next time, guys, that was another episode of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.